Alright, cool. So, yeah, welcome to Performance Review. The joke is where I help you take your game from 0 to 60 frames per second in 16.6 milliseconds. So that joke will make sense later. I'm on this side. Me. So my name's Alan. I'm Brower. I've been a Unity developer for 8 years now. For the past almost 4 years, I've been working for a company called Interplay Learning. They are a Unity house creating simulation-based training software for trade skills. People going through school or learning on their own how to install solar panels and HVAC and all that stuff. We run into performance issues all the time with our Unity software. Something we have to tackle on a daily basis. Extremely well for it to be an enjoyable experience. So our issues range anywhere from code to graphics issues. So that could be causing any form of lag in our software. Tonight we'll be talking about, hopefully I'll be able to take some of what I've learned about performance in Unity and kind of pass it on and help bring your Unity games up to performance for the devices that you're targeting. So we're going to start with some of the terminology behind performance in games. Just so we're kind of like on the same page there. So start from kind of the basics and then move on how to diagnose performance in your game. So how to use built-in Unity tools to kind of figure out what's going on and what your game is thinking and doing in the background. How to identify them. So how to, without the tools, be able to tell, oh, this is what's going on. Like I see lag, I see some form of performance issue in my game and I have to fix that. And then how to actually fix them. So how to actually go through and fix all the issues in your game, and all of these terms and fixes and issues exist in just about any game engine. It's not exclusive to Unity. Unity just gets the brunt of it because of various reasons. People just try to throw stuff at it without thinking and then hope that Unity cleans up after them. Things are going to get a little technical tonight. I tried to make as much of this as broad and as easy for beginning to intermediate Unity people as possible. But if something tonight gets technical, I'll alert y'all. They're alert. And if it's way too technical, please interrupt me if you have any questions. But save the hard-hitting questions for the Q&A at the end. The big thing with this talk is if I've done my job right, this talk will break your perception of performance in games. You won't be able to look at a game either made by indie or AAA without seeing any form of performance issues or being able to tell, it's like, oh yeah, I see that, the hitching or the freezing or whatever is going on in their game. And I do want to note, I'm not the absolute authority on this. I've done as much research as I can into this, and I know some general best practices, but there are people who are way better than I am at this. I just know like the base stuff that like causes the common issues and then how to fix those common issues and some of the best practices there. So yeah, let's begin with the basics. So we're going to start with some really simple terms when it comes to performance in games and make sure that we're speaking the same language. So we're going to start with frame rate in games. So if you've ever seen like people talk about film generally runs at 24 frames a second. TV runs at 30, or TV shows run at 30, and generally TVs and monitors run at 60 frames per second, so 60 hertz. So why those two numbers? So like I said, most modern displays refresh at 60 hertz, which is every 16.6 repeating milliseconds, and 30 hertz is half that, which is a nice number. So keeping a consistent 60 frames per second is really hard. So what a lot of developers will do is they'll just kind of bite the bullet and let it run under 60, between like 40 to 60, because it's a lot easier to optimize for that, and then just limit the frame rate so that it stays constant. So you don't notice stutters or any frame rate issues. Like if it drops 1 or 2 or 3 frames, or even 5 or 10, you wouldn't even notice, because it's like it's running at 50 in the background and only showing you 30 of those. There are newer displays in the past, like probably like 5 years to a decade. Like 3D displays came out, which were really high refresh rate, and then now they've kind of moved on to like just general high refresh rate monitors, like 120 hertz to 240 hertz. So what that means is that that display is able to display more than 60 hertz. That's kind of like a common thing with like a lot of people. They're like, how many frames per second can the human eye see? And it's not limited by any factor. The human eye doesn't see in frames per second. They only see what their display is able to show them, and generally they're able to show them either 60 or, if they have a nicer monitor, 120 to 240 hertz. Games are kind of pure witchcraft. When I talk to people or hear from people in other types of development, they're really happy when something that they do works in 100 to 200 milliseconds. They're like, oh, it's really fast. And then you talk about games, and it's like, that has to happen in 16 milliseconds. So, yeah, it's kind of witchcraft in terms of VR as well. VR has to run at 90 hertz, which is, I believe, 11.1 repeating milliseconds. So it has to dish out a frame every 11 milliseconds, which doesn't give you a lot of time to run your code or for your graphics card to hitch or anything like that. So if you're developing for VR, this is especially helpful for you. This is something I see debated among a lot of gamers and developers and stuff like that, is vertical sync. So if you don't know what vertical sync is, to put it simply, vertical sync ensures that frames rendered from your device sync up with the refreshes of the display, so that your device isn't trying to deliver a frame to your display that the display is not ready for. So it ensures that it's nice and smooth. There's no bad frame pacing, no screen tearing, anything like that. So at full vertical sync, that would be 60 frames per second for most displays, and then half of that would be 30. So yeah, every v-blank 60, which is, v-blank is the setting in Unity in the quality settings. So every v-blank versus every second v-blank, or I think, yeah, it's every second in Unity. So you want this on. Keep it on when you're working on stuff, especially if you're working on mobile. Having it off, even though your frame rate might be higher, so say your display will show 60 frames per second, but your game is running at 90 with vertical sync off, the frame rate will appear lower to the player than if vertical sync were on and it was delivering frames to the display at the rate that it was supposed to. It would appear nice and smooth, and I actually have some examples ready that will kind of show you what a smooth feed from a game looks like. So some other terms I'm going to go over very quickly. Some language stuff that I'm going to be using tonight is main thread. Refers to the part of the processor during Unity's run that all your code runs on, just runs in order. So everything in start update, fixed update, and a bunch of other built-in stuff in Unity all runs on the main thread. So you can consider it that. A bottleneck is when either one, the processor or the graphics card is halted, it's taking too long to do something, and it's preventing the other one from continuing on. So if your code is taking 1 millisecond to run and your graphics card is taking 19 milliseconds to run, then you are GPU bottlenecked. So your graphics card is taking too long and the CPU is just sitting around doing nothing. Frame pacing. This is something that you see a lot when watching like performance analysis on YouTube or whatever. So it's just the ability for the device to deliver frames at the correct time according to your screen's refresh rate. So generally you want it to happen every 16.6 milliseconds. And if it happens any less than that, you have a bad frame pacing issue. And you'll see some minor stutter. And the last thing is